and I have no preparation, so they want to learn, but it's we that are the block for the training.
Right.
Papa?
I just want to affirm Carlos that
Yes, yes.
actually you're doing a lot of training. That's really awesome. Like, in much more than my organization has ever done. Like, he said, I was like, fuck, whoa, this guy Carlos is like doing a lot of training.
I
But
know.
this is a really important distinction here, is that we're not talking about you doing training. We're talking about viral mass training. That means that it's not just about you training, it's about you training to create trainers that then become trainers, that then create trainers, that create trainers, that create trainers. And that's the only way you can absorb momentum, because momentum is exponential. Okay? So if you're not exponential. We can't mass produce Carlos, okay? So we have to figure out a way. We have to find a way that Carlos can have babies, and that they develop super fast, and they have Carlos babies, and then Carlos babies has Carlos babies, and we have this amazing, proliferation of babies. So that's the difference between what Carlos is saying and what he's saying.
I totally agree with this, and also just to flag some of the challenges, like I hear Will on some of that stuff, because, for example, during Occupy Sandy, our rotations were so fast, our iterations were so fast. I would set a training in one place, train a number of people to do it, train other people, go to another spot, come back 2 days later. A few of the trainers were amazing, on point, and some of the trainers were power tripping and dangerous.
Wow.
And so being able to do that quality control in an ongoing way is something that was very, very challenging, because we were in this whirlwind moment. There were enormous numbers of people coming through, and there was also the question of how much people could have that kind of overall view. And so that was something that we learned to correct for a little bit, but it took additional capacity in terms of okay, then who are the people who have X amount of experience and can come, the next day and the next day, and can be looking at this stuff, and what are we checking in with each other. And so again, there were layers of that going on that were just a challenge, just an additional challenge in really fast moments. It's not like this all the time, obviously, but in those fast iteration moments.
Sam, I would just ask you a question. How important do you think it's for the team to have a curriculum and have trainers prepare, at least a group of 5 or 10?
I mean, that goes with us. It's totally critical.
So before escalation.
Though, I mean, but the thing was, sometimes we were hit with these moments that are outside of our power, and they just boom, happen, and all of a sudden, yeah. And so finding those people, and again, in these moments of the whirlwind that are a little bit different from when we're preparing, and so I think this is great, and we should prepare more. But sometimes
you gotta go.
Sometimes you just gotta go, and so building those teams in those moments is very, very difficult, because people are moving on to other things. It's hard to, so there has to be some kind of consistency among some kind of core, or it falls apart. And the iterations keep going, and they absolutely keep going, and they're great. But without some kind of consistency, they will evolve, they will morph, and sometimes they'll morph incredibly beautifully, and sometimes they'll morph in ways that are really, really scary.
I want to say this. In response to Nicole, is that that's when I say what does the core do? The core creates the DNA and the systematized mass training, and then they're stewards to protect the integrity and the purity of the DNA. And that is what the core, because a lot of times the core is one of the only people that can do quality control. That means that there's 1,000 Carlos, right? We can't, at that point, you can't do much, you can't do any training, but what you can do is make sure that those 1,000, there isn't any super abusive, crazy Carlos that develop cancer, right? So there needs to be some sort of control for cancer, and and even in mass training needs to do that.
Oh, just kind of relating to that, in Occupy, I remember we had facilitation training, and one way that we kind of overcame this and did do quality control was a really firm mentorship program.
Yes.
And so trainers who were knew what was going on, I put on a facilitation team and innovated a lot, but in a good way. And but then you know, when we were training more people, we give them very like, we throw them in the deep end, you know, but we give them like very easy tasks at first, and then elevate till they like leading it, but at that moment, we were like in the background, we were right there for like a number of cycles, just to make sure they knew how to like handle certain situations and be like a direct consultant, and then after that, like after we did that a couple of times, those people were actually like legit prepared to not just lead the facilitation, but like train other people to continue the cycle, and so that was a good.
I just wanna say one more point to back you both up, is that, in exactly what Sam was saying, is quality control is after they've done a few trainings, you know if they're cancerous or crazy or whatever. Like, if you have to respond to a moment, quality control isn't the most important thing. If there's just a moment of the whirlwind, you do whatever you can with the capacity that you can.
And also the role that you were talking about, so like there's a tradition I'm learning more about in terms of network organizing, and the role that you're talking about has the name called the network guardian, and it's a
Yep.
kind of
Yep.
stripped of many powers, because sometimes the person who's like got the bird's eye view is kind of seen as some kind of weird power, whatever. But understanding that the role is just like checking in on consistency around the DNA. So that's like one of the roles that I think about a lot now when we're thinking about this in network guardian.
Max, last
Matt.
comment?
Just that's what Yvonne would talk about in terms of that's the role of the core after you launch, is just enforcing the DNA and just protecting it from cancer.
So quick review of this last one. You have a trigger event. What do you do first? Schedule it. You go to your Facebook page, you go to Twitter, and you tell people it's at 6 p.m. on Friday. Okay? Let's say that it's on a Monday that this happened and you're gonna do it on Friday. Then on Wednesday, you do a train the trainers. Okay? And then on Wednesday, you say, please come to the training. Don't forget, and you mobilize for the training, and you train 100 plus people or wherever you come. Okay? It's an interesting story. Joy Cushman from the New Organizing Institute, I got to spend about a year just training with her, really learning a lot how they systematize the trainings with the Obama campaign. And she would just tell me they had so much momentum that there was a time that it was just like 2 weeks before the election, and they're just like, we do not know what to do with all these people. And they say that they just say to people, okay, we're gonna do a training the weekend before the election. And they said, okay, we're like 5 days from that. Let's just fly everyone into Ohio. They flew all these people in, and they just told them, look, you all are gonna be trainers now. Here's the basic information, this is what you need to do to build teams, blah, blah, blah. They did them 2 days, and they sent them to be trained the trainers. Was that a lot of high quality, yes or no?
No.
No. Did that get them massive amounts of engagement? Another example, just so you understand this. There was the Arpaio campaign that Promise Arizona was doing against Arpaio. They were registering a lot of people to vote. And they were doing this massive registration, and they had gotten to 13,000, no, 13,000 registration, and they were 5 weeks from the election. And has anybody here worked in an electoral campaign before? Okay. You know that pulling your canvassers off canvassing to do training is like a big deal. Because your numbers are gonna decrease because you don't have people on the streets. Is that true or not?
Yes.
So we made this huge fight with NOI, and NOI said, this is really the tool of scale. We said, now we gotta train all the canvassers for a weekend, and they gotta develop more teams. And this is what happened. Let me show you just what happened. They stopped. It's a big decision, because your numbers go down, because you have nobody on the streets. They went from 13,000. The following week, they were in 16,000. Then they went to 20,000. They got like 28,000 people registered in 4 weeks more. They redoubled that. They had spent 5 months doing that, doing 13. They doubled 13 in 5 weeks. Why? Because the pressure of the election creates momentum, energy, right? And because they pretty much training is, okay, here you go, decentralized. Are you following how this goes? So scheduling a training on those moments is a huge deal. And I cannot tell you the fights with the organization. Why are we doing training? You're pulling canvassers off their ships. Because now you gotta prepare the whole training, right? But the results were outstanding. That voter registration was greater than any Latino voter registration in the history of Arizona. The only group that did a voter registration just as close as those numbers was Cesar Chavez and the farm workers. Just to give you a context of scale and numbers. That was in 2011, 2010. Okay, so we got no momentum. Now, this is another part of the poem I want to talk to you about. We want to make a distinction between mass initiation trainings, or initiation mass trainings, and advanced trainings. So, some people, most of the movement of people, you're going to actually train them into tell them, look, this is the grand strategic objective, this is the campaign, and this is how you fill up some of the tactics. Is this making some sense? Very basic stuff. Take an action, be part of the campaign, form a team, all this work. This is all initiation mass training. Now, there are some people that are going to be team captains, team leaders, that are going to be based on regions. They need more advanced training. Is that true or not? So those leaders are trained on this part of the pyramid, mainly about campaign development. So these people are really thinking week to week, these people are really thinking month to month. It's a whole other effort. And in Oxford, they had this whole system which Sam was talking about, that they had these different levels of training. They had level 1, level 2, level 3 to really know your advance. And the more advanced you were, the more training you were able to do, but the more complex campaigns you were able to run. Of course, all under the pyramid, right? You could do anything within the sandbox, everything within the sandbox. So, this is also what I would say from my experience, and then I want to let it to Paul to start a little bit about this. In United We Dream, our problem was, I think, with the cultural training that I really did not understand this before, was that we did this amazingly. We did this great. Right, Muffin? We had it down. If you were a new person, we could train you. We had curriculum, we had the leaders, we had the trainings, we had the culture. But if you wanted to learn how to run campaigns and do advanced training, we didn't really have this for you. This was only developed at the top leadership. There wasn't a lot of strategic campaigns. We didn't have that systematized. And actually, one of the reasons why I left the network and started doing movement mastery was because I really wanted to develop this. But in the organization, there were really no resources and the time to really systematize, because systematize takes a long time. Paul?
So I want to say this, is that when we're talking initiation training, in the culture of momentum, in the Clamshell Alliance model, in the direct action movement, and even Occupy, a lot of Occupy LA and stuff had a 2-hour initiation training. Most people didn't go to it, but there was a culture of training. It was 2 hours. Now, we just gave you all the elements of DNA. We gave it all to you, okay? Can you fit all that in a 2-hour training? Would you be comfortable at whatever you could communicate to people in 2 hours, that they could go out and actually follow the DNA? Right? How long would it take them to give them everything so you could trust that without communication from you or any other leader, that team is not going to be cancer? How long would it take you to train them? The Serbians said, this is what the Serbians figured out. They said, in Akpor, they said, it's going to be 2 to 3 hours for 5 to 6 days, plus they had a bar that you had to do an initiation action to prove that you knew the DNA and actually did it. Okay? 40,000 people went through that training, and he said, at the end, there probably would have been 100,000. They just didn't have the training capacity the last day of the general strike to train everybody.
Paul, can I say something about
Sure,
this? I was talking with, and then we'll go to you, Nicole, sorry. I was talking to Yvonne in James Olson Institute, and of course I'm trying to nerd out about their training program. You know, like, tell me all about your training program. And I'm just thinking he's going to tell me, I train thousands. You know, and I said, Yvonne, how many people did you train? He tells me, you know, like 100. He trained 100. But totally, they trained, how much, was it 40 or 70,000 people? Around that, right? Whatever. Let's just say 40, okay, let's feel better, 40. But he only trained 100. Can you think about that? Isn't that awesome, first of all? That you develop the training capacity, that he's just like, no, he told me later, I was just in a couple of trainings. I was just like, and just Nicole, and then Ben.
So this is where it falters a little bit, because
Yes.
I don't think I understand how you. How do you get someone's time for 20 hours?
Yeah.
2014. Like, I can't even get someone to watch like a 5-minute video. So, like, actually, I just don't understand how you, like, get people that amped to, like, stick with you for that long.
Does anybody have an answer for that?
I do trainings in communities, we'll go back 4 or 5 times, and each one of the trainings that we do is 8 hours long, and then there are follow-up webinar trainings that are 2 hours each. And usually the way that we get people to commit is the very first training is only like 2 hours, and we don't waste their time, and then we get them hooked on it, and then we say, are you willing to give, 20 hours of your time, or 15, however long it is, 15 hours of your time, to create like this kind of change in your community, you'll be able to do this, and then you'll see do. And usually people right away say, absolutely, I can do that. Especially if they've been suffering under something for years. A lot of people are very willing to do it when you lay it out for them like that.
So, also in Serbia, the way that it worked was you know the story, but part of when they would do the street theater and they would recruit people to the initial training, the first day was on the grand strategy. And then they were like, either you're in or you're out, right? And so they come in and they tell you like, yeah, we're gonna overthrow the dictator. And you'd be like, that's fucking crazy, like no way. And then they would sit with you for 2 hours and they would just explain to you why that's what they were gonna do. And by the end of it, if you bought it, you were fucking there. You know what I mean? like you didn't, oh, okay, yeah. And if you did, then you know what, have a nice Tuesday, because you're not coming to our training. And that's fine.
Just to add, Nicole, before what I would share before we go to Dan, because I know some other people have questions too, is that organizers, we need to appreciate more what a training does to create momentum for an issue. Because this is the thing, when you're doing a one-on-one meeting with a leader, it is so hard to get them to commit, because they actually feel it's just you and the person. But when somebody comes into a room, and there's 20 other people, the equation shifts. When they hear other people saying, yeah, that's not bad, we're gonna do so, it changes the equation. In United We Dream, we used to pull these large conferences. And people will say to me, Carlos, they're too big. I'm like, you don't understand. For the psychology of a dreamer that drives 20 hours to a national meeting, right, Maria Fernanda, gets on a bus, is risking deportation by getting on the driving with other people. Some people drove without licenses to get there, right? For them to feel like, wow, I'm gonna commit myself to this struggle, it better be freaking big. And some of our conferences were massive. 500 people, I mean, and we were like, we had so few resources to put them together. But those things create so much momentum for your organization. Let's get to Dan and then Belinda.
This sort of came out, but maybe people could talk in more detail about like the best practices for pedagogy for the trainings, like the sorts of activities and how to inspire that. Because I liked your final point, because again, of course, coming out of my tradition, I'm thinking the only way to really get a commitment is to look somebody in the eye and make an ask of them, and then make like 5 follow-up phone calls. I wish I was joking. But I would love if I could stand in front of a room of 100 people and do something really kick ass and get 100 people to commit. And I don't know how to do that.
And commit to each other.
Right. That's really powerful. So how do you do that?
Well, I don't know. We'll figure out. Belinda?
This is responding to Nicole's question. I'm not sure how the sequencing of this lined up with when they kicked off mass training, but I know that early on, Upward did a lot of like prophetic promotion and stuff to hype themselves up, and like had their like whole individual resistance campaign, whatever phase, and then they would like drop like leaflets from the tops of buildings to like make them seem like they're everywhere and stuff.
That's
and then
awesome.
like they released this like document called like the Declaration of the Future of Serbia and shit. So they did like which was like their like mini manifesto vision of tomorrow kind of thing. So I know that they did a lot of stuff early on to make them to kind of promote themselves and to like seed this idea of like what they wanted to do.
And how many people did they train in the first year?
I don't know, it wasn't that many.
It was like 300, right?
Yeah, it was,
I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, like,
I just want to say what Belinda said is, what we're talking, when you have momentum, it's actually pretty easy to get the commitment. It's when you don't have the momentum, is when it's a problem. And then structure-based, look, I was trained in structure-based organizing, where we're asking workers to join a committee, okay, where there's a very good chance that if the more leadership they take, that they're going to be fired from a job that is the most important thing in their life right now to provide for their family. It's a huge risk. It's super scary. And they commit to that, I do house visits, get people into committee meetings, and